Hello to all of our listeners, and welcome back to The Parent Solution, your one-stop shop for all things educational. I am, as usual, your host, Kimberly, and today is another fantastic guest episode I have Jaci Finman here with me today, and Jaci is the founder of No Problem Parenting and the No Problem Parenting podcast. She's committed to helping parents become the confident leaders that their kids crave them to be. For more than 30 years, Jaci has worked as a family counselor turned parent coach, meeting with kids and parents directly in their homes, in person or virtually, and she helps them to deal with and overcome their behavioral and communication challenges. Now, as a parenting coach, parenting strategist, speaker, and a leader, Jaci has more than 50,000 hours of experience working with parents and children affected by trauma and mental health diagnoses. Her down-to-earth, authentic, relatable personality adds light, hope, and clarity to her clients. One of 100 first cousins, she enjoys baseball, hockey, and dirt. I must say, I like that last part. Welcome, Jaci. It's good to have you here.
Thanks, Kimberly. I'm excited to be here. We finally made this happen.
Yes, it's been a while. It's been a while. Glad that we could make this happen. So talk to us a little bit. Tell us today what it is that got you started, and what it is that really inspired you to found the No Problem Parenting as a No Problem Parenting coach.
Yeah, so I started off thinking right out of high school, working with kids with disabilities and as a personal care attendant. And I thought that my plan for college was going to be focused on kids with special needs. And my goal was to become a special needs director one day. But a few years into college, I became aware of a diagnosis called reactive attachment disorder, or RAD. And that's when a child hasn't bonded in the first 3 years of life due to abuse, neglect, medical pain, postpartum, variety of trauma-related kinds of experiences that didn't allow the child to trust the adults. And I became so fascinated with that diagnosis and the little kiddo that I had, the first kiddo that I had worked with, who was 10 years old at the time. And I was like, wow, this mental health stuff, like this is like, what is this? And how can this cute, adorable, little girl be so mean and manipulative, triangulating, and just like how it was like this Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing. What she displayed at home often wasn't what she displayed in public. And so I got really intrigued at that, and I dove headfirst into learning all things attachment and unattachment, and eventually ended up leaving the special needs trajectory to start to go the mental health route, and became a in-home family counselor, mental health practitioner with a counseling agency where we did all of our counseling sessions in parents' homes, and the kids were our clients. But after doing that for I was about 18 years in, and I had become a coordinator by then. I was managing over 80 therapists and counselors, driving to 32 counties in the state of Minnesota, over 5,000 miles a month sometimes. And I was just never home. The work was pulling me further and further away from the actually helping the parents in their day in, day out challenges. And I felt like we were kind of keeping kids victimized and families victimized, like they were becoming so reliant on services, and that just wasn't feeding me. And the mental health system had changed. Medical model had gotten in the way in the probably right around the early 2000s, I think it was. And so it was just not feeding me like it used to. And so I decided I needed to do something else. My son was 8 years old at the time, and I was never around for him. He was starting travel sports. And I'm like, I gotta do something different so that I can, here I'm an attachment specialist, and I'm away from my own kids so often. So all because of a goldfinch and a song. I mentioned that in episode 32 of the No Problem Parenting podcast. I decided to take the leap and exit stage left and start my own company, and I called it Hello World, and its mission was awakening attachment. And then in 2019, after doing hundreds of virtual sessions with families, I started to notice some common themes about what I was telling all parents, regardless of if their child had a diagnosis or not. And so from that, I ended up creating an online course, which is just 96 minutes. It's short and sweet, but packed with information. And I named that No Problem Parenting. And then that's how No Problem Parenting was born.
That's quite the background. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And now we're celebrating 10 years of Hello World and No Problem Parenting in November of this year. So I look
Uh,
back and I think, what the heck happened? My kids graduated, and how did I get to this point already so soon? It went really fast.
right. Well, they say time flies when you're having fun. So
I guess so.
in that sense,
Well,
that you enjoy what you do.
owning your own business, it's not always fun. You work a lot. So I gave
Mhm.
up 70 hours a week to work 70 hours a week at home, but with much more flexibility. So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I definitely do understand that drive. Yes. I 100% I get it. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about what no problem parenting does. You mentioned that I mean, obviously I know what it is that you do, but maybe just clarify for me, what is it that no problem parenting does? What are the goals that you focus on or the key strategies that you focus on with your
Yeah,
practice?
so it's just a three-step process, but I want to begin that by saying how I even came. I mean, it used to drive me nuts when people would say no problem. You'd ask them something, they'd be like, no problem. And you're like, I kind of feel like it's a problem. Or if I would say no problem, I'd be like, no problem. But then later I'm going, why did I say yes
Hmm.
to that? Why
Yeah.
did I agree to do that? So I was really kind of leery about that title at first because no problem always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But the reason I decided to go with no problem is because if you look at the definition of a problem, like just the word problem, it says right in there that it's a matter or a situation that's unwelcome or harmful and needing to be dealt with and overcome. So
Hmm.
right in the definition, needs to be dealt with and overcome. And that's what I believe. I believe that problems are meant to be dealt with and overcome. And so I help, and I do this with my clients every single day. I help you turn your problems into no problem. I help you with those behavioral and communication challenges that you're having in your home. You are the expert of your child. In fact, that's the name of my chapter in volume 2 of the book, which you are actually joining me in. Well, I'm sure we'll get to that in a little bit. But you are the expert of your child. But just like the expert of, the owner of a company, the president of a business, they're the expert of their business. We don't have to be the expert in every area of our business. We can seek help. We can seek support. So we don't have to be the expert in everything in order to be the expert of our child. We are still the expert of our child. We can seek out these other resources and knowledge and things like that. So first, I want to just clarify the problem piece. And second, when parents come to me, I say they usually have one of three problems, overall problems, right? They're either being too nice, they're being too mean, or they're trying to solve a problem that they don't have experience in, and they're trying to do it alone. Right? So no problem parenting teaches you to, number one, seek first to understand, why is my child behaving the way they are? And why am I responding or reacting the way that I am as a parent? What baggage have I grown up with and brought along in this parenting journey of mine that's kind of triggering me or setting me off every time my child has this behavior? And I also want to mention 90% of the time, I made that number up, it's in my experience, 90% of the time, the behavior problem is not that the child's displaying, is not the actual problem. There's something going on underneath. A
Hmm.
bully in school isn't the bully part, isn't the initial problem. There's something going under it. Happy people act right. Dr. JJ Kelly, she's been in both of the books. She says that all the time. Happy people act right. So there's something else going on where that kid or that person is not happy. Step 2 is to prepare for the worst. We can't always be prepared. Life throws us curveballs, and our kids most certainly do. But there are those behaviors that we know are going to happen when we get home from work or pick the kids up from school, or those, when they wake up in the morning, they're going to have this behavior. And those are the challenges that we can prepare to respond to instead of reacting to. And then step 3 is to change the conversation. I believe we are giving our kids way too much unconditional praise, so much so that they don't even believe it themselves. And what is the point of us pouring on all this praise to a child when they don't even believe it themselves? We look really silly. We look kind of stupid. And for kids with severe or significant mental health challenges, we look unsafe, or we appear unsafe. If we have to try to convince them that they're better than they think they are, or they have more friends or whatever, then it seems to the kid like we would not be able to handle their deepest, darkest thoughts, behaviors, and feelings. And so I teach a lot about the difference between unconditional and conditional praise. Give the kids some factual conditional praise first, and then pour on the unconditional. And then we teach a lot about empathy versus sympathy. Our kids do not need us to be feeling sorry for them, right? They need
Mm-hmm.
us to help create some empowerment and some confidence and help them grow into confident leaders. But that starts with the parent being a confident leader. So we change the conversation by also helping the parents to learn how to communicate differently with their kids.
I love that. I love that because when you're talking about families, it really is a unit, right? It's not just one person or one individual that may be the problem. And I like what you said about how behaviors are never the actual problem. Behaviors are almost like symptoms of what is the real problem, right? And so getting to that real problem, I think is really important. I love that you have that mindset and you have that focus in your practice. I mean, 30 years, you've been doing it for quite some time, so you're the expert. But I think from an outside looking in, that's really amazing. I like that you do that.
Yeah, thank you. And
Yeah.
yeah, an expert, sure, of course I can be an expert because you do something for 30 years and you are going to gain some skills. But again, I want the parents to be the expert. I want them to feel as confident in their parenting instead of like, oh my God, this parenting is so overwhelming and I'm so overloaded and what did I get myself into? Or you feel like you're not putting yourself first because you can't because you're just too busy. I help you become that empowered, confident leader that your kids actually crave you to be. The more misbehaved they are, the more they wish they had a parent that knew what the heck they were doing and felt confident about doing it.
Give us like one tip. What's one top tip that you would say for parents who are looking to become confident leaders? What's your number one specialty go-to?
You got to take some of the emotion out of your child's, the reactional emotion out of your child's behavior. We often think that if our kids are mean or naughty or back talking us, we get all like inject ourselves into that behavior. Like, they better behave. They better respect me. Or feeling sad and, like feeling like we have to give in and we have to coddle our kids to get them to like us, especially in 2-parent homes, we're fighting for the relationship and who has the better relationship with your child. Got to take some of that emotion out of it. The kid is the kid. We're the adult. And so when a kid shoots their mouth off, wet noodles on the floor in tantrums, throws a fit, rolls their eyes, slams the door, all of that. And we get defensive. But this actually works in any relationship. I got to tell you, Kimberly, us adults have a lot to learn when it comes to this. Resistance creates resistance, but we're the adults. And if we get so triggered and set off and defensive and we feel like we have to play tug of war with people all the time over seemingly little things, right? When there's a big perspective, if your child's on their deathbed, that nasty behavior they had that day is not really that important. So let's not make it into a bigger deal than it really is. That's what I mean. No problem parents turn problems. We say, hey, problem, I see you over there trying to put a wedge in my relationship with my child. I've got this. No problem. And I'm not going to put in a whole bunch more emotion, whether that's anger, worry, fear, sadness, whatever. I'm not going to put all that emotion into my child's behavior. That is I think the best tip I can give anybody. And that takes practice to not do that because the muscle memory of our brain, when something negative is done or said to us, the muscle memory of our brain says we have to react. When I hear it's okay to have arguments. It's okay to have differences of opinions and, to have a, kind of a back and forth conversation. But when people are really forceful and they're like trying to prove and they've got this, like, they're just so angry and they're defensive, I'm like, ooh, there's some work that person needs to do underneath. Because we shouldn't be that reactionary to something that somebody else says or does. If we are confident in our own skin and happy in our own skin, we tend not to do that.
So true. You're right. That's definitely something I know a lot of adults need to learn as well. Yeah, and we can learn a lot from kids, realistically.
Mm-hmm.
We can learn a lot from kids. Okay, let's talk about the book chapter that you've written. I know that, yes, you mentioned that we're both part of it. That's actually one of the ways in which we met and have collaborated, I think. And I'm really excited. Talk to us a little bit about your chapter and what's going in there and how things are working on that end.
Well, and you were also on my podcast, Kimberly. We can't forget that. I think that's the first time we met. Maybe Melissa Deely or somebody connected us, another Canadian friend.
Yes, I
our
think
networking
so.
friend, right?
I think so, yeah. And then we got into, I was on your podcast, and then we decided we were both going to be in the same book together. And then now you're on my podcast. So this is just a great collaboration of the minds. I like it.
Yes, absolutely. So I was going to look up really quick to see which episode you were on. I should have done that before we even.
Episode 135.
That's your episode, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
I'm
already know
pretty
it.
sure.
That's awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Episode 135, and that helps me out because I can take a look at it. Support your child and teens academic success. That was the title of that episode. I love that. And I love how you share about the myths about homeschooling and tutoring and things. So hopefully, and obviously I'm on your podcast, so everybody already that's listening already knows about, what you're doing. But yeah, my podcast led to the book. So in 2019, I started No Problem Parenting and shared the online course. And then in did I do that right? 2019 was the course. Yeah. 2021, here's me asking you, like as if
I think so.
my dates get all foggy because there's been so much going on here. It was April of 2021 that I finally started the No Problem Parenting podcast. That took me about 2 years to have the courage to actually do the podcast. I was intending to just put out my own tips, tools, and resources every week to parents. But within 4 weeks of having the podcast, I started getting all these guest requests. All these people were coming to me to want to be on the show. And I was like, how do they even know I have a show? Like, this is so new. But I entertained the idea of having guests because I thought, well, this would be really fun to learn about, these other resources that can support parents. So to date now, I've had just over 150 guests. So I think we're at 100, episode 165-ish or something like that. And after a year and a half of having guests on, I was like, you know what? These are really amazing people that are experts in their niche. And I don't want their message, their services to get lost. So I created a resource page on my website. And then somebody said, hey, you should do a compilation book. And I was like, what's a compilation book? Like, I didn't even know what that was. And someone had asked me to be in one of theirs. It was very business oriented. I'm like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm going to get more. I want to do, one of my friends actually said, Dawn, she said, Jackie, you should do your own. So I learned about what that was. She hooked me up with a publisher. We had an amazing first book launch, top three, top number. We made hit number one in Amazon in 3 parenting categories. And so it was so fun. I had 21 authors in that first book that we decided to do a second book. And I have another new publisher. We have Linda Sunshine West from Action Taker Publishing. She's just been amazing. I'm sure you've experienced the same thing with Linda and her team. And so the second book that you are in, that you've written a chapter on, is coming out August 22nd of 2023. So I'm super excited. And the whole point of the book is to provide parents with a variety of tools and resources that they can use right in the moment by reading the book. And then also providing those resources that if there is a chapter that really resonates or a person that they've gotten to know a little bit by reading their chapter, that they will reach out to that resource that maybe they didn't know, wouldn't have otherwise known existed before. So yeah, my chapter is You Are the Expert of Your Child. And I go into the story of way back before I became a counselor and way back when I learned about mental health. The experience that I had with the very first child that I worked with, that at 10 years old, that had reactive attachment disorder, and how that was really that drive to support and advocate for parents was born in me. And that passion was really fulfilled way back then in 1992, I think it is. But yeah, I love resourcing parents. I love offering, resources that maybe you don't have in your local community. We always want to try to go local first, right? But if they're not there, you shouldn't have to wait to, or just take whatever resource you have. You should have access. Everybody. I hope that everybody has access to the resources that are going to best fit their child or their family. And that's what Hello World's mission is really, has really shifted into and is about now.
I think that's really important to have that as well. I like what you said about making sure that everyone has access to that, right? That you don't have to sit and wait. You don't have to sit and, not know what to do. You have resources and you have people that you can reach out to. I know that's one of the things that you also stress is important is building a community, right? Of people who are able, people who, even if they can't solve your problem, they know somebody who can help you, maybe not solve your problem completely, but help you to work through that on your own. Because yes, as a parent, that's one thing that I say all the time. As a parent, you are the expert of your child, but you don't have to go the whole journey alone by yourself.
Right. And you don't need to. I love your services, Kimberly, which is why we connected. Why Melissa felt like she should connect us, because she knew after talking with you and maybe being on her podcast and you were on hers or something, she's like, oh, Kimberly fits this mold. In your chapter, for instance, I was just going to say the words almost verbatim, but your chapter in volume 2 of No Problem Parenting, Resources and Stories that Create Confidence and Connection is the name of the book. From uncertainty, your chapter is called From Uncertainty to Clarity, Breaking the Mold of Traditional Education. And, we experienced this with our own son, where, during COVID, there was online school and he excelled, but he has dyslexia. And we didn't even though we tried to figure this out for years and years and years, he wasn't diagnosed until 9th grade. And, then in 10th grade, COVID hit. And he actually excelled because he didn't have all the distractions of feeling like he wasn't going to get done with assignments or things as fast as other kids. He didn't have the confusion of being taught a lesson 3 or 4 different ways on any given day by a teacher. He didn't have to deal with the politics of school, and he just literally could learn and focus on his learning. And then last year he played for a juniors hockey team, so his senior year, and it was out of town. And so he left his school in-person school that he'd been at, and he did an online school during the hockey season, and he excelled at that. Like he just about hit, he was at a 3.5 grade point average. He went back to his in-person school for just the last maybe 45 days. And he ended with like a 2.7. I still want to call the school. It's so frustrating. A grade point average, which is just a bunch of BS actually, because it did not show anyway, that's a whole nother story. I could derail the podcast with that, but it just goes to show there are some kids who excel in person because they need and they thrive on that socialization. And they're more adaptable to, a variety of ways of being taught, or of being taught just by sitting in your chair and following the rules and going through the motions. And then they get to socialize. There's purpose for that group of kids. That's great. That's fine. I went through, I think we've all survived it. In other words, like your story that you share in your chapter, but there are many kids who struggle. And why would we not seek alternate ways of educating our kids when those ways are available and not what we think they are, as far as, like time consuming. So parents, you got to get this book, read Kimberly's chapter. It's brilliant. She breaks those myths. And you break those myths, and your services just support so many kids and families. So I'm really happy that we're connected.
I am as well. It's really great to have you in my network. Thank you so much, Jaci. Thank you so much for all of your time and your expertise. I know this is not the last time we'll talk, so I appreciate you showing up. I appreciate you being here. Tell our listeners, just before we close out the podcast, where they can find you online. Where are you located on the World Wide Web?
Yeah, the best way is to go to the website. Everything is on there. No Problem Parents with an S.com. You can follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook at No Problem Parents.
Perfect. Excellent. Simple, clean, effective. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Jaci, for showing up today. For those of you who are familiar with the Parent Solution podcast format, you know that as of the drop date of this podcast, there's also a blog that was published on our website. So if you want to head over to that and find all of Jaci's links and a little bit more about her and our conversation and how the two of us work together, then you're more than welcome to check that out. That's at www.starstudents.co. That's .co. Thank you again so much, Jaci. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kimberly. We'll see you soon.
And that is all for this week's episode of The Parent Solution. If you have any comments or questions, either about this challenge or others that have come up for you, you can always find me on social media. It's Star Students on Facebook and LinkedIn, or starstudents.learning on Instagram. You can also reach out through email, which is all over social media channels. Thank you, as always, so much for listening, and I'll be back next week.